Tabletops will start after the following messages.
Are you looking for something comfortable to wear and keep your brain warm while playing tabletop games? Daily Dose of Yarn makes handmade, customized beanies for all of your style and comfort needs. She can even help you with a custom beanie to represent your favorite character. Check out Daily Dose of Yarn on Instagram and Etsy to order your new favorite beanie today.
In a world headed for disaster, 5 strangers with mysterious pasts are thrown together by the winds of fate to try to stop the unseen forces that threaten to destroy their world. Relic of the Past is a novel-length story told via a clean, custom, 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons game. Find us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever fine podcasts are found, and at poolmedia.podbean.com.
Snyder's Return is a tabletop role-playing game interviews and actual play podcast. We interview content creators, Twitch streamers, and fellow podcasters, and we put out our own actual play using a variety of different systems. So come and join us, come and have a listen. You can find us on Twitter at Return Snyder. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, or check out our website at www.snydersreturn.squarespace.com.
This is Josh.
I'm Liwanika.
And I'm Glenn.
Tabletop Journeys is made up of a team of dedicated role players, storytellers, and friends. Together, we have more than 75 years of experience in countless role-playing game systems, and we love to share our passion with you.
We formed Tabletop Journeys to do what we love, create epic adventures in fantastic lands with amazing people. We bring our player-driven, story-first game style to everything we do. And no matter what game world you're playing in, detailed settings, heroic characters, vibrant NPCs, and a focus on story over rules can make any campaign legendary.
Be sure to subscribe to our podcast to check out our take on D&D 5e's core rules and ever-expanding content, and to explore other RPG systems and fresh new projects from indie content creators. Join the conversation and let us help you, player or storyteller, get the most out of your campaign's narrative, player characters, and NPCs.
You can also find our original content and rule supplements by searching for Tabletop Journeys on DM's Guild, Kickstarter, and wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Tabletop. Today we are exploring the Astral Sea with Spelljammer, space clowns, giant hamsters, beholders in space, I guess. Beholder asteroids. We're going to talk everything about this new setting release from Wizards of the Coast, Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and talk a little bit about its history as well. With me, I have Shade, who you all know and love, and a new co-host, Tim.
Hi.
Tim, how are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Tim Gardner. The end. No. Long-time nerd, first-time podcaster, big fan. So yeah, I mean, I go way back with Dungeons & Dragons, way back to my elementary school days in the late 80s, early 90s. Get off my lawn. Spelljammer was a big component back then. It was a big revelation for me back in the day.
Yeah, can you let's start there, because Spelljammer is such a strange setting. Yeah. I think everybody can kind of just start with that agreement. Can you tell me a little bit about your history with it, the history of the setting, and like what it is, when it came out, all that kind of stuff?
So yeah, so back in my early days, it was just my friend Dave and I. We were the only D&D kids. So Dave and I didn't play much D&D. We just read a lot of it because he had the books, and we tried a lot of fits and starts of trying to get games going with people, with friends, with kids in the neighborhood, and never really stuck.
But that's how you just play Dungeons and Dragons, though.
Right, that's how you tried. But back in the day, it was a little bit more difficult because we had THAC0, and that was a real pain in the butt, because this is like 2nd edition AD&D stuff.
More math, more
crunchy math. Negative numbers are good. So yeah, a lot of that. So it was a lot of Dave and I just poring over these books. And we were just like, my personal hunt back then was like, well, I got to find the good art, because back in the day, the art was very hot and cold. So I was in it for the, like, well, this picture of a lich is dope as hell. And then this picture of a bugbear looks weird, like a teddy bear that has fur rubbed off. That's confusing. So yeah, it was just a lot of lore hounding, I guess you could call it, for my friend and I back in the day. And, conventional fantasy setting that it was, we thought that was it. And lo and behold, 1989 rolls around. What should show up? But Spelljammer. Well, that sounds cool as shit. It's got the word jam in it. So it's already,
and I love jam. Raspberry's my favorite.
Thinking cool musicians too, like
I was gonna say this is the late '80s, so jam, yeah.
It's like, yeah, man, we're jamming on music. All right, this is cool, and he gets it obviously before me, because that was his job. He was the provider.
That was his role.
His role was provider of nerdery.
Right.
And he comes over one weekend, and he's like, "Now, Tim, you know about ships in the ocean, right?" I go, "Yeah." Like big tall ships. Yeah. He's like, "Now what if those were in space?" I'm like, "Oh."
And you're like, that wouldn't work.
Right. I'm like, "Yeah, everyone's dead." He's like, "No. What if I told you?" And then he went on to tell me all about how they have their own pockets of air, their own gravity, all the weird quasi-physics of it works, the conjunction of spheres, shall we say, the crystal spheres.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a lot. It just it blew our minds. It opened our eyes to a much wider realm of possibility than we had ever thought could be. And then, of course, that led us to explore stuff like Dark Sun. And we went even deeper and stuff, et cetera, et cetera. But Spelljammer was really that foothold of things can be bigger than what they are, and nothing is too weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like inhospitable climate plus spells plus cool fantasy stuff equals setting.
Yeah. I mean, and I know it sounds like on the surface like a prog rock band in terms of describing of its nicheness of it.
Yeah.
In terms of wow, there's so much going on and it turns a lot of people off,
Yeah.
Like Emerson, Lake and Palmer type of stuff. That's the theme music to this is Emerson, Lake and Palmer. It was just dope as hell. I mean, you had, not only were they galleons in space, but you had ships that looked like a Nautilus in space, and mind flayers are way more prevalent in space,
and not necessarily evil. They might be friendly.
Exactly.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. So Spelljammer came out. This is all happening. Your mind has been expanded in this way.
I was 7 years old. It was intense, man.
You immediately grew a long hairband style mullet, and you just immediately started throwing dice in space. I love it. Shade, what about you? What's your kind of history with Spelljammer?
So I had a kind of a similar experience to Tim in that my early days, I didn't have the good fortune to really play a lot of D&D or anything like that. My mom actually played some D&D in high school and got in trouble with family and things like that. It just was one of those things. Yeah, so it was one of those things that my family was totally, my parents were totally cool with that stuff, but we just didn't play it in our house. We lived far away from people and gathering people. So similarly, I also just kind of consumed anything I could read about, and I got to play a few games in college and things like that. But truthfully, my first chance to actually play in a Spelljammer setting was with Tim. I had only ever really had the good fortune to read it up to that point, and then Tim started up a 5th edition game about, I don't know, 6 months after 5e's release, I want to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we played through that, and gosh, within a couple of years had found our way to a Spelljammer. And
he says found. I say, I mean,
Directed.
I was orchestrating it all from behind the screen, but continue. Sorry.
Puppeted as my plaything.
Yes, this is, but our characters found the way.
Yes.
And I was so jazzed about that personally, just because this is a setting, and anyone who's listened to the podcast before knows I love multiversal shit. I love the wild and weird and completely out there in the just infiniteness of it all. And this is one of those gateways into that. So I was very much on board, and I've got to say, Tim did a fantastic job putting together some homebrew rules for a 5th edition campaign. I think this was even before Ghosts of Saltmarsh, which
it is, yeah.
Yeah. So
it was stressful.
Yeah, but you nailed it. And
as DMing always is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we got sort of both of your personal histories. My personal history with Spelljammer is that I usually confuse it with Planescape. So I am kind of coming into this with my mind unexpanded. I have seen a lot of advertising recently with like space clowns and weird shit. And I want to, from you two who are like historically steeped in this setting, what the heck is Spelljammer? And can you like basically give me like between the two of you what this setting is, and then what it's like really good for when you're running a campaign, and what does it allow you to do that like Forgotten Realms doesn't?
Well, so I was overly harsh on Forgotten Realms a while back. I do want to say I should have been much more gentle with it, because honestly, it's a fantastic setting. That little aside put away. What Spelljammer does is that it says, oh, cool, you're playing in Forgotten Realms or Dark Sun or Eberron or wherever the fuck you want your setting to be placed, but you also want to, I don't know, maybe take a trip to another setting, or you just want to take a trip to anywhere you could possibly fucking imagine. Cool, let's do that. And let's also give you an opportunity to have a high seas adventure, except for the sea is the ocean. The sea is space.
Yeah, the astral sea. The
sea is the ocean.
Stay with me, guys. The sea is wet. It's bluish green. Get ready.
Yep.
So yeah, the astral sea, it's there, and the ships are called Spelljammers, correct?
Well, we're gonna really split hairs.
Yeah.
The Spelljammer is the helm that controls the ship that makes it into what it is.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's just a very elaborately designed ship that will just kill you in the vacuum of the void.
With one exception, of course.
With one exception, which is not mentioned in 5th edition.
No, it is not, and I was pissed off about that.
So, you want to tell them what it is?
I'll go dive in. So the Spelljammer, from which all Spelljammers get their names, is a massive ship in the shape of a manta ray, and it has a city of essentially entrapped individuals. Like, I don't. Maybe I'm remembering this wrong, Tim, but I don't recall any indication that anyone there was like, I want to move to the city inside of the Spelljammer. I think it's just like if humanoids get near it, they like the Spelljammer tries to charm them to live there.
Yeah, and the Spelljammer was like this whole thing where it kind of created itself, or it's a living thing. Yeah, it's a living ship. It's Maya from Farscape.
Gotcha.
If Maya was into psychically dominating you.
Okay, so this is this. Again, I am so uninformed about Spelljammer. Is the manta ray sigil?
No.
Okay.
The manta ray is Spelljammer.
Yeah.
Oh.
The manta ray. Yeah. So like every Spelljammer helm gets its name from the Spelljammer, which is this sentient possibly offspring of a forgotten god, or it's something that will become a god when it matures. We don't know, type of thing.
And Wizards just totally canned it with the new release?
No, I wouldn't say canned it. I would say they left it out.
Sure.
Probably maybe in another book. I mean, they replaced it with that asteroid city that I can't recall off the top of my head.
The rock.
The rock. Yeah, instead of having the Spelljammer, like floating city on the back of a giant, they just went half an asteroid with a giant city on its back.
It's the Rock of Brawl. I thought Rock of Brawl did have an older, some legacy to it.
That I don't have filed away in my actually no,
in your brain space.
Many large cities like the Rock of Brawl have a permanent scavenger crew whose job is to kill scavengers. Yep, there it is. The Rock of Brawl is in the original setting.
But
nice.
But they have definitely kind of sidelined that all the same. And that's I know we're talking setting, but when we eventually kind of talk a little bit about the book for 5th edition, that is something that I think I will certainly talk about or mention. Wizards has a habit of giving you a little without giving you it all anymore.
Yeah, they do tend to stay on the side of like, hey, if you want it to be there, put it in there, but we're not going to write it into existence right now, at least. So this setting is kind of a mix of high seas adventure and multiversal space chaos. So like, what is this setting good for? Like, what does it offer players and DMs and things and people who interact with it that other settings you just aren't able to do with it? You know what I mean?
Sure. I think, personally for me, what it offered was a break from kind of like, you want to break the tropes, right? Like, man, why do mind flayers always have to be evil? What if some of them were okay? That type, just that alone, So I think it's a way to explore people. Like, it's kind of dipping your toe in the pool of, I'm ready for something new. I want to try something different. And this is the way to introduce you to that concept. It's your Smash Brothers of role playing games, because you go like, oh man, what if Dragonlance and Greyhawk and Phandalin and Faerun and what if Driz was there? Yeah, and they all mash together and they. It's like a way. It's a shortcut. It's a way to do that, and that's not wrong. It's a way to facilitate that.
And Driz Panther, he jumps on the back of a prismatic dragon and then flies through space.
But then they meet a giant space hamster. And like, what? Yeah, man, those exist. They're real. And so that's why I think people are put off of it because of that inherent campiness value to it. But I mean, with any D&D thing, at least this, again, from my own perspective, it's a diving board into whatever you want to do with it. You don't like giant space hamsters, you don't have to use them. You don't want X, Y, or Z, you don't have to use it. It's all about germs of ideas, I think, with explicit rules, which helps if you just want to run the thing to get used to it. I that's what it's good for. It's good for making all of your favorite settings kiss. It's making all of your favorite characters be around each other, and it's giving you an opportunity to have your level 18 ranger move into a setting that he, just hey, he's not a part of. My level 18 ranger, this guy's going to he's going to go to Dark Sun.
Yeah,
how's he going to deal with the lack of trees? Let's find out. So.
This dude loves water. There's none of it over there. What's going to happen?
Hope you like silt. Yeah, exactly. So So that's how I always viewed it, at least. It's just a diving board for whatever you want.
So Shay, that's like a great sort of summary of like what it can do. It sounds like it basically just opens the like it just opens the doors to and say like all of these limitations of other settings that we've kind of put on either inherently or explicitly, like they are all gone, and you are able to do the things that you were not able to before. You can move settings. You can like introduce this campy weirdness. You can also go super, like there's a mind flayer in Waterdeep, and then one day you see a boat fly into the sky, and you chase him on your own boat, and hey, it becomes a Spelljammer campaign. But like, what does the setting like lore wise offer you as like hooks and things like that? Like Waterdeep has a bunch of these kind of hooks that kind of bring you in with established lore. Does Spelljammer have that sort of thing?
So I should clarify. Are you specifically speaking about the 5th edition book, or do you mean, or I apologize, the 1 D&D book, or do you mean the setting historically, or?
See, this is a great chance to start maybe separating these out. Let's talk about historically, what was that, and then what direction is Wizards going in with this new release? Is it the same? Is it completely different? That's a really great distinction. So let's kind of talk about both.
So I think historically, I mean, Tim really hit the nail on the head. It gives you freedom and jumping points. I will say one of the really cool things about Spelljammer is that it adds a greater diversity to your cast of NPCs, players, monsters that maybe wasn't there before. And a NPC race, I don't believe before 5th edition they were ever a playable race, if memory serves, but Tim, please correct me. The GIF, or because they're now saying that it could also be GIF,
right.
But the GIF were at one point these hippo, essentially British colonialists.
Yeah, right.
And the idea of British colonialists in space going about kind of like humrumping about magic and things like that, because it's so silly.
Whimsy.
That's right. That is such a wonderful, oh my gosh, what would it be like if our party of nothing but wizards, because we thought that was a great idea to do in THAC0, what if they encountered GIF who thought our magic was silly and had these motivations that are very different from our own, and are carrying guns as well.
Yes. They're 9 feet tall.
Yeah, they're 9 feet tall. So it's a great idea starter. But from the 5th edition standpoint, what this setting, this setting still does that largely, but as far as hooks, as compared to, I think what maybe you were asking was, as compared to like Waterdeep Dragon Heist, they released there are 2 things. They released for free via D&D Beyond, a lovely Spelljammer Academy adventure. I think it was 4 or 5 chapters. And it was kind of saying, okay, your group is set in Faerun, and they find their way to Spelljammer Academy. And there's this fun little adventure alongside that. The Spelljammer book actually has an adventure as well. It's the
Light of Xerixis.
Thank you. I really appreciate that because I could not recall it. Yes, Light of Xerixis, which also has, a really fun adventure that puts you at odds really with the Astral Elves. And I would say, honestly, this is one of the things that I took away from this edition. They have, because I was speaking about the GIF earlier, they have taken away the British colonialism for valid reasons,
right,
and obvious reasons. But I would say that colonialism is still there with the Astral Elves. It's just slightly different. Now it's, instead of being British colonialism, now it's it's the Empire from Star Wars.
Yeah.
Still very British, still very evil, but different. And, I'm also kind of painting with broad strokes here. It's not entirely that.
No, I mean, it's interesting you say that because I just recorded, and it will come out in a few weeks, an interview with a cultural sensitivity consultant that works on TTRPG design. And one thing that they would say is that one thing that they would read for is like, I don't know if you knew, but you just recreated colonialism in your game. So it's like pretty, like, I think it's interesting that that's still the like seeds, the stuff is still in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I don't know. Do you agree with that, Tim? I don't know if I'm painting at least the Astral Elves and the Adventure of Light of Xerxes correctly, but that was kind of my read of
No,
them.
that was my read too. You have the austere type of power that's in, you know what I mean, like that overbearing power that casts
that kind of waspy sensibility.
yeah you go when you're eating dinner with them and they're just like shooting daggers at each other, like, oh yeah, the meal's really good, no, a little salty, don't you think? That type of like,
we eat in silence.
Yeah. And then the awkward pause and just the clattering of cutlery.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I think that it's cool to know that they are accepting, like you said, Shade, this sort of the addition of kind of limitless possibilities, and also throwing. I think that one of the things that I got out of it from my kind of cursory glance is like them creating stuff like the space clowns and the giant hamsters and all that. All of that stuff is kind of to say like, you are unconstrained here. Like, let yourself go completely wild, and this setting allows you to put it in. Yeah. Like, if you want to have like giant lunar moths that fly through space and like their dust like destroys like Spelljammer masts, I don't know, whatever. Like, that's fine because we have space clowns. Everything is fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like that's. You're right. It's a germ of an idea. Use this if you want. Go take it harder if you want, or soften it if you want. Like, it's just giving you permission.
Yeah, and I think just because I'm super interested, I know Shade, you love mind flayers. Like, can we talk a little bit about what their role in the setting? Because they are essentially in like Forgotten Realms and a couple of others. Usually they play the role of sort of these monolithic evil sort of like ununderstandable creatures that just are essentially stand-ins for cultists in Lovecraft.
I love mind flayers, but you know who really loves mind flayers?
Who?
Tim. You can't. So I would love to speak, but I think I should pass this to Tim.
No, you can speak, but I mean, this podcast doesn't matter. Cut this out if you want, Nick. There is a picture of me as a mind flayer hanging up behind me.
I didn't see it. I didn't see it. Now I do.
I'll bring it closer.
It's so goddamn good.
That
you got to send me a picture of that, by the way, so that I can put it on Twitter.
Sure. For context, I wear a green fez with a D20 on it that when I DM, so that mind flayer has my glasses and is wearing a D20, D20 fez. Anyway, so yeah, mind flayers. What about them? You want to know? I mean,
everything, Tim. Let me devour all of the mind flayer knowledge in your brain.
It might be good because I will just say right now, in the fifth edition book, not a lot of mind flayer action going on.
No,
not a ton. But historically, they're there, and I think that's maybe what we want to chat about.
Yeah,
historically, they're the big freaking. They're what lurks in the shadows of the void of space, historically speaking. Like they are that threatening, otherworldly, truly alien presence, right?
Yeah,
that's their whole shtick. But in Spelljammer setting, they say, "Yep, they're still there. They got creepy ships that they're Spelljammer helms, but they're kind of not because they attune psychically as opposed to magically." They got There's whole rules about attuning to a mind flayer Spelljammer helm if you were to overtake their ship. But yeah, the Illith. This is the setting was giving Illithids permission to like not all be inherently evil. You could have.
It's like, hey, those guys over there, they're the bad pirates, but those are the fun pirates.
yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, you know what's cool? They're a hive mind, but what if you had a few guys or gals, or actually they're pretty genderless. What if you have a few of them? Because mind flayers reproduce through tadpole and mutation.
What if you had a few squids that were not?
Yeah, what if you had a few of them that broke away from the mind, and they were just trying to make a living and apply their trade, or just get by in the sphere, in the crystal sphere?
Do they still have to devour minds?
There's some biological things you can't get past.
You're like, okay, I'm not an apologist. They still eat brains.
Listen, I'm just just like Michael.
But hey,
Michael,
this one's a carpenter.
Yeah,
this one eats brains and is a carpenter.
Yeah, but you know what? The people whose brains he devours, maybe they had it coming. You know, maybe he sources his food a little bit more ethically than his kin would historically. You know, so it's that whole thing. I mean, in my setting that I shoehorned into the game I was running to make my friends like. When Shade's saying I introduced them...
Give us a fantastic experience. Let's just put it that way.
Because my motivation was, I'm going to test my friends. I'm gonna put Spelljammer into the game that we've been playing for, at that point, like 3-4 years.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it. I hope my excitement will rub off on them, and I hope how I'm interpreting it and making this setting my own for my... then 5th edition game in which there was no official literature on how to do any of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I hope my reworked version of it will get my friends into it and expose them to it. And that's what I did. I had the GIF that were, balking at magic and like, this is quite a wonderful whimsy. Yes, cute. I had the GIF doing that. I had mind flayers that broke away from the hive because their ceramorphosis, or how you want to pronounce that?
Yep.
Didn't quite go as planned. So you had different mind flayers with different quirks about them. Like you had Octavius, who could speak with his mouth, but because he had a beak, it was quite lispy. And then but he still had to eat brain. He still had to devour intellect. Then you had another mind flayer that maybe underneath his tentacles was a human mouth. He could speak fine. He could eat human food. So it was just introducing, like, pushing all this at them. Like, look, it's a Yuan-Ti, but don't worry, they're not inherently evil. But that Yuan-Ti just wants to sell you their goods.
I do like that in Spelljammer. It does sound like, with this opening up of the canon, essentially, that you're essentially removing the morality.
Yes.
The morality of certain like species and all that kind of stuff, which I think is very cool. Like, that's fun.
And that was because that's what I also really had a passion for, was removing morality from a race of things.
Yes.
Because listen, if you're a devil or a demon, you're meant to be the, elemental version of that thing. And that is malice and hatred or
like demons are literally chaos that swirls around and like finds a physical form.
Yeah,
so
they're
it's like
incarnate.
a little different.
Yeah. And and devils are lawfully self-serving. Like they have a code, but they don't care about you. Like that's different. That's metaphysical. I will let that slide to a degree, unless it's a more interesting narrative can come up. But in terms of like an organic race, shall we say, that is, reproduces, has to eat, has a natural lifespan. No, you're not. You shouldn't be inherently evil. Like, So the Illithid is, why are they evil? It's because
they eat sentient things.
Yeah,
that's really the only reason.
Well, then everybody's evil, then ain't it? They're evil because they inherently consume sentient things. Yes, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was also my way of trying to break the whole, like, just because that's a bugbear, you could be a hug bear. You never know.
Yeah. Right.
So
this actually is a great kind of transition into another thing that we, like Shade, you've already mentioned this, and that I'm really interested in as well. The new book came out, and this is the 5e or 1 D&D version of Spelljammer so far, and What are the good things about what's in the book? What does it do really well? What are the things that where it maybe came a little short or stuff wasn't written in that you wish that it was written in? And then eventually we'll do sort of a buy, borrow, pass on this new sort of setting book as well. So who wants to start us off on like what their kind of analysis is?
So I'll just kick in. 5th edition doesn't know how vehicles work.
There it is.
And it really sucks. Like, I think everyone, anyone who plays, specifically anyone who manages, does a dungeon master or game master or whatever, runs games, probably expected for this to maybe kind of miss the mark in terms of actually giving you good mechanics for your ships. They did some things with Ghost of Greymarsh and Saltmarsh. Whoops, Saltmarsh. I knew that sounded wrong. Ghost of Saltmarsh. That were, I don't know. What did you think about those? Because I found them pretty lacking overall. Those ship rules.
You talking about Saltmarsh? Or are you talking?
Yeah, Saltmarsh first.
Yeah, it was lacking, but it was something. You know, it was. It was. So like you said, when I started my shoehorn Spelljammer into our before Saltmarsh got released, and when Saltmarsh got released, you better believe I ran to that and rethought a lot of stuff that I shoehorned in because I was hungry for that vehicle stuff.
But it was still pretty lacking overall.
Yeah, it was. But it was like, oh, maybe this is a portent of things to come. We were so young and naive.
Oh, man. I would say for this, they didn't even really utilize the Saltmarsh rules they had already established. And there's a lot of contradicting rules in this as well. Missing information. I was reading, there was something that someone pointed out, and of course I've lost it now, but there is a spell that is outright referenced in this book, and it is nowhere in the book. It's other than this one reference, like, and it's italicized to indicate, yeah, you'll be able to find this in the spell list, and it's just not there. You know, that's the kind of unfortunate reality of this book. It says Spelljammers are a thing. They can only go like 40 feet per round, and instead of using
40
them,
feet? You can run faster than a Spelljammer?
when it's out and about on like next to, like, if it's in something's gravitational sphere, that's how fast it moves. And if you want to do any kind of like ship battles, you can maybe utilize some of the weapons, the ballista and things like that on it. But it would be better if you just simply kind of like boarded the opponent's ships.
Can I read that particular thing?
Yes.
Yeah, page 25 of the new Spelljammer book. Such weapons are slow to load and fire. Player characters are almost better off using their own weapons and spells in ship-to-ship combat, reserving shipboard weapons for targets that are too far away to be damaged by other means. So they are insisting, please do boarding stuff.
Yeah.
Which, you know, on the one hand, if you think of a high seas adventure, and when you think of the fact that, like, okay, well, it's my character, and my character's this big damn hero, and part of that is going to be like, you know, anytime you see like a pirate genre television show or movie or something, one of the most exciting things is when they swing over and they are then having the battle on the other ship. But it's also ridiculous that at some point we're not going to use cannons or something to that effect, in any meaningful manner.
And I feel like you could write some weird bit of lore into it to like apply both. Like you could have it so that like the masts of a Spelljammer since they require so heavily like on magic or something, they would attract the magical energies of the whatever you're firing from one shipboard thing to another shipboard thing, so that you can use it to like break the mast and they can't move, and then you have to board to take over the ship or something. Like, you know what I mean?
Right, and what you're describing to a degree is kind of the original rule set in the AD&D book.
Yeah.
They have rules about how the ship breaks apart when it reaches 0 hull points. And It talks about the effects of that type of thing. You know, gravitational wells, essentially. Magical wells.
Mm-hmm. So it kind of sounds like the designers are really into the NPCs that this offers, the new maybe spell settings, that kind of stuff, but they're still trying to move away from vehicles. Because like I've been in a couple 5e campaigns. I have to say, every single time there's some sort of mounted combat rules or a vehicle gets involved, it just sort of becomes a little hazy because it doesn't feel as defined.
5e's or 1D&D's greatest strength is its open-endedness. It's hand-waviness, if you want. It's the rule of cool.
Right.
But it's a double-edged sword on that, because now when we want more specified rules for certain things, we don't have those. So putting the onus on the DMs to make their own rule set for specific things that aren't covered in the book. So then you start thinking to yourself, why was the point of a book then if I don't have rules for these things that I can reference a little bit, you know? So that's kind of, I think, a lot of tension is coming from, I believe. So as a grognard, I love 5th edition's streamlined nature, believe me, but it does, it's very lacking. Part of that is on display in this, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the lower kind of parts of this book is a lack of a real set of rules to implement some of the Spelljammer. Because like in a Spelljammer campaign, from everything you guys have told me, one of the big things about it is being on a Spelljammer. So it sounds like one thing that the lower points of this book is that they don't give you a real codified set of rules to make that feel like streamlined and sort of like rules that you can learn, and this is how they work. What are the things that like really lift this up into a place that's like exciting, or something that you got out of the book that you were really happy with?
Yeah. Personally, I think the adventure's pretty okay.
Yeah.
I think that adventure is worth playing. I think, and if you haven't also gotten the free one, I think, which is still available on Beyond, gosh, if not, I'm very sorry I directed you to that. I thought the Spelljammer Academy adventure was pretty neat too. A great way to kind of introduce the setting overall. And moreover, I think obviously the player races, there's a lot of great value there. And the monsters. I mean, who doesn't want more monster stat blocks?
Oh my God, the monsters. They brought back my boy, because I love me the dark, mysterious types, the Zodar. Which are just, you give me a mysterious thing. I love it. And that's literally what the Zodar are.
Don't explain anything about it. That's how I like it.
well, see, that's what I mean. There's the double-edged sword, because here I am complaining about they don't explain enough in this book, and yet here I am. I'm saying you have a mysterious, the Zodar are back, and literally their whole shtick is what they can say up to 25 words.
And they don't, the moment that they say something, it's important. So, if a Zodar says run, you fucking have got to run the fastest you've ever ran in your life.
So they can only speak 3 times, and on the 3rd time, they're done.
Wow.
They're gone.
So every time is the most important thing that it can say, or it thinks it will ever say.
Yes. If it effing talks, it can only say 25 words, and they're going to be very important.
Yeah.
And the whole Zodar is just people are I don't know, that's just the Zodar are around, and people just have to accept it. No one knows what their deal is. They're just they're this armory, black-clad, robot-y looking thing that kind of floats around, doing its things, and you can pal around with them, but they're not great conversationalists.
They're really more the strong, silent type.
Very silent, yeah.
You know what this kind of reminds me of in a way? This whole thing kind of reminds me of the Fast and the Furious franchise.
Family?
Okay.
What about family?
Me too. I just love family. Because it's sort of like it is campy, it's crazy, it just gets wilder and wilder, and everything is accepted, and that's what makes it amazing. And the things that make it like, what is like, how did they just drive a car to space?
Yeah. How did they drive a ship to space?
How did they take that galleon? Yeah.
But that's really good to know. So if it seems like this release is a little like mechanics light, but like set dressing, monsters, NPCs, locations. It sounds like that's all in there to really give you a place to go hog wild in.
Yeah. Sorry, Tim. I did want to ask you something because I was curious about your opinion on this, Tim.
Okay.
Speaking of like kind of streamlining rules, which as you said, fifth edition 1D&D has done very well. I personally like this, but Crystal Spheres and the Phlogiston are gone. How did you feel about that?
It's not gone in my book.
So
no, I mean, but I like cobbled that together in my own campaign.
Yeah.
Like I didn't use Crystal Spheres. I used Phlogiston though.
Yeah.
You know, it's I made it more about interdimensional travel and the membrane between realities as opposed to literal crystal spheres of solar systems that bump into each other.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that.
And
because
I was just gonna say, and Nick, just for anyone who hasn't got experience with these, as Tim said, crystal spheres kind of contained a solar system inside of them, and then there were portals that could open up in the spheres, and you could sometimes force a portal to open up or force a portal to close, and yada yada yada. And that's how you got out into the phlogiston, which was this flammable substance that
highly flammable,
that held all of the crystal spheres together. So, like, for example, the solar system of Toril, the world in which Faerun exists, the Forgotten Realm setting, is in an entirely different solar system than I just forgot what the world for Dark Sun is, but for example,
Athos.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure I'm correct on that. They're in different solar systems, and
everything. Yeah, exactly. Every setting's its own solar system.
And
like Greyhawk.
Right, exactly. And so, if you wanted to go to those worlds, you had to travel to the edge of your solar system, go through the crystal sphere, however you're able to do that, whether you had something you could detect where portals were going to be or make a portal, travel safely through the phlogiston, and then make it through the other crystal sphere. So it was this kind of wild experience. But in this new 5th edition, they say, okay, there is wild space, and that intersects with the astral sea, and that intersects with the material plane, and you just travel. You know
what I think it is, though? Because I'm listening and I'm like, man, that sounds so cool and unique when you talk about the spheres and all that. But that might be why they didn't include it, because like their direction with 1D&D is so that every setting and like idea essentially can exist at the same time, and by establishing like a really clear way that the multiverse is like not so much a multiverse but like a locational thing, like it might undermine that. So maybe that's why they went with a different thing.
100%. Crawford has said time and time again, it is one material plane. There used to be separate material planes. It is now one material plane, and every world exists within it. It's just a matter of how far away those worlds are. And I think that this is very much in keeping.
Like more like a galaxy or universe view of things. Yeah,
it'd be interesting because like I want to be careful how I say this. I read a lot of Warhammer 40k lore. I'm not like a Warhammer 40k person, but it's kind of endless, so I just read it sometimes.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
But it feels like you could.
Who hasn't?
It feels like you could kind of do something similar where, like, you know how in 40k the warp is essentially you just like puncturing through real space and going straight to hell. Then you come out the other side in a different location. It feels like they could have done something where it's all sort of in the astral sea and stuff, but you have to, in order to travel fast enough to get from one plane to another, essentially, that you had to puncture something and go into that really flammable substance and all that kind of stuff. And then that way kind of keep the spirit of the spheres. You know what I mean?
I mean, they definitely still kind of have that. It's different though. Now the wild space. So like, Faerun, Toral's world, that wild space entry point into the astral plane could be very far away when you travel through the astral sea to the next wild space jump into another world that I just have forgotten every D&D
every single one
name.
of them.
Yeah, I can remember.
Just go with Athos again.
Athos,
Go with Athos.
I already forgot Athos. That was the thing.
One thing that I want to ask for people who buy these editions just for the greater amount of like class options and stuff like that, does it gives you a bunch of new races, I know, like a bunch of different new player characters you can create. Does it give you new classes, any new features, anything like that that allows you to customize player characters a little bit more?
Just the races.
Yep, just the races. In fact, there are only 2 spells in this. I'm sorry, 2 and a third one that's referenced but isn't in the spell list.
I'm like desperately going through the book to try and find that third.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find that.
Send it to me. I'll throw it in a Twitter post.
But yeah, so it is just the races, of which there are 6.
Okay.
And of which one of those is another elf.
Right.
I love elves, don't get me
Astro
wrong.
elf,
Yeah, but
you liked elves, now you got space elves.
yeah.
So I'm kind of getting a feeling from the way that we're kind of talking through this book already, but I would love to get your buy, borrow, pass sort of feelings on it. From what I have heard, just to kind of summarize again, it's a freaking awesome setting where anything is possible and like very flexible to whatever DM's needs that they have. But let's say about what this book gives players and DMs. Is it a buy, borrow, pass in your opinion? Let's start with you, Tim.
Oh, you can't tell me. I mean, I'm a freaking fanboy. I'm going to say buy it, even though there's like glaring holes in it.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll try to keep this really short. Buy it if you would like to increase your garden of ideas.
I like that.
What about you, Shade?
I mean, like Tim, I'm also a fanboy, so I bought it ages ago. But I'm actually going to say, I know not everyone likes to do digital content, and for good reason. But this book is also divided, or this set is divided between 3 books. I would say if you do digital, buy in pieces. Buy the things that sound really interesting to you, because you can buy literally individual monsters and things like that through D&D Beyond, which is neat. There's something to be said about that. I should also note, as an aside, there are 2 backgrounds, the Astral Drifter and Wild Spacer, which I did forget about, but
I forgot about
they're nice. They're nice. They're doing the new background thing where it comes with a feat, which is cool. So I would recommend buying pieces, but in particular, if you're a physical buyer, I would say go ahead and get the Adventure, which is the Light of Xerxes. Definitely get Boo's Astral Menagerie, and then maybe borrow the Astral Adventurer's Guide so that you can snag the things that are player options, and then maybe look to 2nd edition for your spelljamming rules.
Yeah, your lore and setting stuff.
Yeah.
Well, not even lore setting, just your hard and fast rules, and you do have to adapt them, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want to know,
I want negative numbers.
Yo, you got it. But yeah, I mean, hey, At least in the important thing about the Astral Adventurers Guide, it tells us the rules of how to go astral fishing.
Yes. I mean, that's all. And in the end, that's all we want.
Right.
That's all we want.
Right.
Well, guys, thank you so much for taking me to the magic space that is Spelljammer. It's super great to be able to just talk through it with two people who know it so well. That's a great recommendation. We have a buy from a super hardcore fanboy. So if you're a super hardcore fanboy, then you maybe should buy it as well. And then a more practical for the layman like me from Shade to the parts that are like the standout parts of the expansion as well. So thank you guys so much. Is there anything you guys want to plug, talk about here at the end of Tabletops? Tim, we're of course going to have you back on at some point. I'm sure. You look scared.
I'm very flattered. I'm very flattered.
Tim, you're a cool guy and everyone loves you.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. But Tim, is there
kiss, hug?
Is there something that, as a cool guy that everybody loves, that you're doing right now that you want to plug? Anything at all?
I will unfortunately say, like every other white man, I have a podcast. I'm sorry. It's about movies. I'm doubly sorry. But there is an overarching narrative, which is very funny. So if you're into that sort of thing, the podcast is AIPT Movies. It's in association with Adventures in Poor Taste, which is a website about comic books.
That's amazing. Yeah, I will include this in the show notes as well. And can people find that on all platforms or only specific ones?
They can find it wherever podcasts are streamed.
I love that sentence. All right, Shade, everyone knows you. They also love you. You're a pretty cool guy. What do you got brewing for us?
I actually do have something this time around. I took on a little project just for me. But if you're interested in looking through 8 subclasses for 5th edition, I mean 1 D&D, but absolutely 5th edition because who knew about that? You can check out DM's Guild, and on DM's Guild, if you search for Yonder Yarns, that's YONDER space YARNS. There are a few subclasses. It's 2 subclasses for each class. It's barbarian, each class of barbarians, bards, clerics, and druids. And, from time to time, I hope to put out more content like that when I can.
I've already read through this. It's really awesome. This one is pay what you can, or you could go to Tabletop's Patreon. It's also available there for people who are patrons of the podcast. Definitely check it out. It's really cool, and Shade is pretty awesome at designing these things, so give it a look.
Oh, thank you.
He's a pretty good guy.
I will say, just please just download it for free. I do not want any money whatsoever, but I would love to hear your input and any way that I could improve it so that I can just continue to make that stuff better.
Awesome. And I'm going to also plug something because, hey, this is my podcast. I can deal with that
No,
sometimes.
you're not allowed.
It's your house, man.
Is that we actually do have a Patreon now. If you want to sign up, please do. You can do so for as little as $1 a month. We throw a bunch of, or I'm endeavoring to throw a bunch of free content for everybody who is a patron, all the way down to the $1, all of the extra behind the scenes look. If we get 100 patrons, we're going to do an extra episode a month, sort of Ask Me Anything for the group of DMs that frequent this. And also, you can get things as cool as 30 seconds of airtime if you do some of the higher tiers. So feel free to take a look at that. It's patreon.com/tabletop. And if we get 50 patrons, I'm going to release an episode of a podcast that I made during a class about how to make podcasts called Pooped the Pants. Which is a podcast about how I am convinced that everybody has pooped their pants, and also like the stories of people who have pooped their pants in a non-sickness related setting. So if you're interested in that, get your friends to subscribe.
We're discounting being babies.
Yes, the basic rules is you can't be a baby. You can't be like completely sick, diarrhea, sort of like I just ate something really bad. It had to be like kind of something a consequence of your decisions. So it's a fun podcast where we explore why this happens to us and what it says about each and every one of us. So if that interests you, it might be a thing eventually.
Nick, there's a lot of meat on that going. Well done.
I know, right? I thought it was great, and I got some great art of some pants with a big brown stain right in the middle.
I will say it's a fantastic podcast. I would put it number 2 on my list.
Oh God! Okay, let's close this shit down. Thanks everyone for listening to Tabletop. We'll be back soon. Next week, we're going to be having an interview with Dr. Moya McTeer of Exolore fame. So we're going to talk about world building with her, and I think you'll be interested. So we'll see you then. Bye, everyone.